I'm here to do the refutation on the Cash for Clunkers speech. My opponent Benjamin's claim was that the Cash for Clunkers program was the right decision for Obama to make. He said that the program fully served its purpose in simultaneously helping the environment and the economy. I'm here to prove that the Cash for Clunkers program is not effective and that it is beneficial for neither the economy nor the environment. My opponent's first claim stated that Cash for Clunkers is environmentally beneficial because it reduces carbon emissions. I think everyone can agree that carbon emissions are harmful to the environment and that cars are the biggest producers of carbon emissions. But is that amount decrease really significant? According to my opponents, the United States emits 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. Vehicle emissions produce about a third of that number. And according to William Chmitas, Dean of Duke University's School for the Environment, each gallon of gasoline combusted in a standard gasoline car engine creates about 20 pounds of CO2. Kathleen Schmatz, president of the Automotive Aftermarket Industry Association, estimates that the Cash for Clunkers program will save around 72 million gallons of gasoline per year. And while this number seems incredible, let's use it in conjunction with the other numbers given by Dean Chmitas and my opponent. When all the math is said and done, the Cash for Clunkers program will decrease our overall CO2 emissions by less than 0.0001%. My opponent's second claim about the environment was that it saves economic resources. This assumption fails to consider the entire picture. Take, for instance, Robert Hemsley, an average American taking advantage of the Cash for Clunkers program. He traded in his 12-year-old Chevy van and got 14 miles to the gallon. And he got a Nissan Cube that got 30 miles to the gallon. This reduced his gas consumption by half, which is good. But what Hemsley didn't know was that his new car actually added CO2 to the environment. That's because it takes on average 6 tons of CO2 to produce one car. This doesn't even take into consideration the energy and effort it takes to extract those natural resources from the environment, ship them to the factory, produce the actual car, and ship it again from the factory to the lot, all to replace a vehicle that currently runs. When asked about this production effect, William Chmitas said that the average new vehicle would need to save about 700 gallons of gas to offset its original manufacturing carbon costs. In addition, my opponent made a huge case for the cause of ethanol under the assumption that people would use the Cash for Clunkers money to buy ethanol cars. But according to the information compiled by Consumer Reports, an extremely low amount of people actually use the money to buy ethanol-powered cars. All things considered, the Cash for Clunkers program does not save environmental resources. In truth, it uses even more of them. My opponent also made a claim that the Cash for Clunkers program was good for the economy, and this, however, simply isn't true. His first claim was that the Cash for Clunkers program helps the American car industry, and in theory, I think the program was intended to do that. In practice, however, the Cash for Clunkers program does little for the American automotive industry. According to ConsumerReports.org, the top 10 vehicles bought using Cash for Clunkers were as follows: Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, Ford Focus, Toyota Camry, Hyundai Elantra, Toyota Prius, Nissan Versa, Ford Escape, Honda Fit, and the Honda CR-V. If you'll notice, only 2 of those 10 came from American car companies. This means that the majority of people traded in their clunker, got the government voucher, and spent the money in foreign car companies. My opponent's second claim on the economy stated that the Cash for Clunkers program increased overall economic activity. Activity, however, is an ambiguous term. Cash for Clunkers did most definitely produce activity, but the activity that went on may not have been the positive outcome that many were hoping for. If you remember the Consumer Report document, Toyota was mentioned quite a lot. That's because Toyota received nearly 20% of the Cash for Clunkers sales business. Despite all this supposed government help, Toyota still decided to go ahead and close down its production facility in Fremont, California. This in turn is said to negatively impact over 3,600 supplier companies and could potentially harm over 50,000 jobs. And while all this does qualify as economic activity, it is probably not the positive economic healing that we all thought Cash for Clunkers would produce. In conclusion, the Cash for Clunkers program was not effective in achieving its goals environmentally or economically. It was successful, no doubt, in getting participation in Americans to buy new cars, thousands did, but it was not truly effective in saving resources or money. Thank you so much for listening.
All right, you labeled the claim and the secondary points very nicely. You had a good challenge on the first point. There's a nice, I think we could use a little bit of an explanation about how you came to that 0.00001%. I mean, you set up all the statistics. I don't think you need to do the formula for us, but you know, give us a little bit of a summary or a paraphrase of what the conclusion is. You just give us that number. I think that the analysis there, though, is pretty solid. The transition at the second point was clear. The CO2 impact, for instance, of production, I thought that was good, although I didn't get a source citation for that data. But the later argument that says we need to, you know, basically save 700 gallons to offset that. Well, how long would it take people owning these new cars in comparison to their clunkers to get to that 700-gallon savings? If you could do the math on the first point, I wasn't sure why we weren't getting the math on that particular point. The ethanol argument I thought was really handled effectively. You had good evidence on that particular point. On the economic benefit, I thought that you minimized the impact for the American car industry by pointing out effectively that the amount of sales were relatively narrow for American car companies. And then the demonstration that it produced a lot of activity. I like the way, you know, it's got a little bit sarcastic in the phrasing. Yes, it produced activity, but not necessarily the activity we like. Toyota closed their plant despite getting 20% of the benefit of the Cash for Clunker sales. I thought that that was, you know, I like the sarcasm in the tone. That's okay. That worked for me. Excuse me. You were 9, right? Kiana's going to be 10.